One of the funniest stories in the Bible starts out as a tragedy. They're in the city of Samaria, and the enemy has them under siege. They've surrounded, they've cut off all the food supplies, and everybody is literally starving to death. And the prophet Elisha comes to the king, and he tells the king, don't worry, by this time tomorrow, food's going to be plentiful and cheap. And there's one of the king's advisors who laughs and says, there's no way that can happen. And Elisha looks at him and says, yeah, dude, it's going to happen, but you're not going to get any of it. Fast forward just a little bit to the nighttime. And there are these four men. It's in 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 3. There were four men with leprosy at the entrance of the city. In other words, men with leprosy, they've been excluded from the city, they've been kicked out, and they're outside the city. And if there was no food in the city, you can imagine that there was no food outside the city. So they are starving to death. They are hopeless. And it says there were four men with leprosy at the entrance of the city gate, and they said to each other, why stay here until we die? Why not do something? So they decided to surrender. And they set out toward the enemy camp to give up, figuring they'll either kill us, we're going to die anyway, or they'll give us food. It's a win-win, sort of. So they head toward there, but when they get to the enemy camp, nobody's home. They've all ran away. The Bible says God sent this sound of rushing something, and it scared them off, and the enemy had left. I had a professor who said it was God amplified their footsteps as the lepers went out there. And they get there, and there's food for them, and they eat so much, and they finally feel guilty, and they go tell the people in the city that it's time to come get food. And so they rush out there, and the heroes are these two lepers. And by the way, the guy who said, oh, that'll never happen, the king put him in charge of trying to keep track of a bunch of hungry people going to get food, and he got trampled to death. And in the middle of it, you've got these four lepers who are, these four lepers who are the heroes. And they're heroes not because they did something spectacular. They're heroes because they did something. And sometimes that's all that's needed, is for you to overcome the paralysis of inaction and do something for God. So if you're not sure what to do for God, sometimes you need to pray about it, and sometimes you need to think about it, and sometimes you need to ask for advice, but sometimes you just need to get off your butt at the city gate and go do something and let God multiply it to get what He wants to happen out of it. And that's today's Jumpstart.